Without a doubt, I think it's by far the best league in the world.
How dare you score like that in the Premier League? Mission accomplished in the Premier League. The American.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the ASTV's Premier League show. We are on match week 5. I can't believe we are officially through 5 of the 38 matches already. Does feel like it has been going on forever because, well, they don't really allow us to take any time off. And even when they do, it's just for us to bitch during an international break. I am joined this week, as I am every week, by my co-host, Mr. Paul Bickler. Bickler, how are you, my friend?
Oh, man, we got to start doing these on days that aren't Monday, so I have better reports. But, yeah, I'm here, and this is the highlight of my day, which says probably everything you need to hear about my day.
Says everything I need to know about your day of spending a half an hour with me talking about shite from England is the highlight of your day. But I love it. But what a week it was. I think we could have done probably 3 of our 30-minute shows just to talk about the Arsenal City match, and we will talk a lot about it. But let's start like we do every week, usually by kicking around the idiots that are those at Stockley Park. So VAR match week 5 review. So for anyone new to the program, we run through a few of the key VAR decisions. We don't go through all of them, but we like to talk about the ones that maybe are controversial, the ones that are getting play in the local media and papers. But most importantly, we try to talk about whether or not it was the right decision, wrong decision, or whether it was the wrong process. We don't normally bring visuals into our VAR segment review, but if you find a picture like this, I believe it would be criminal not to actually share it. So somehow this guy with a double-footed karate chop coming at Kamada, and that is not a joke because of his ability to play for the Japanese national team. But Lisandro Martinez, maybe he just doesn't like Crystal Palace. Maybe he thinks this man looks a lot like the butcher who gave – the butcher who gave him that haircut. And I wish I had a little slight angle to the left here because it would show you in full frame that not only is the referee looking directly at the 2-feet double takedown, like WWF old school wrestlers would have thought this was like a here? Well, I'm going way back. I'm going beyond the entertainment. I'm going back to the Federation. Like we got a lawsuit from the wildlife folks, right? Like this is old school, like double-footed drop kick right here. He comes in studs blazing, and of course it's David Coote.
Yeah,
so nothing should surprise anyone. He sees the foul. He gives a yellow card. Now, Paul, regardless of what's given on the field, how in their right mind is this not then overturned and turned into a red for reckless play, endangering an opponent?
I mean, the most plausible explanation is just start the series of unfortunate events with a guy named David Coote, and it all lines up. And then behind it, you have Kavanaugh, who doesn't have the stones to basically say, hey, man, you should probably look at this. Whether he gets the ball or not, we can't have these challenges happen. And it just doesn't happen.
And, I mean, it wasn't Chris Kavanaugh the one who actually had the stones to send Rice off on the pitch, and probably make the right call for the kicking the ball away. But see, that's what I hate, because that one's so black and white. He felt like he could almost hide behind. I didn't want to give him the second yellow, but I had to. We all saw him kick the ball away and stop the restart. This feels like it's just lazy and weak. you made a good point. The didn't make contact with the player, which is true. He doesn't make contact with the player. That is because he missed breaking his leg, not because he didn't try to break his leg. And this happened last year. I think it was Luton Town versus City. The Luton Town player went in with a huge tackle like this. He jumped in on a player. I think it was a Kanji. He didn't hit him, so they gave him nothing. And that dubious panel came back and said, oh, no. This is still a red card and should have been a sending off offense because it was the endangering of the player for the act, not the action and the reaction or the response. So to me, I feel like this is one we will get clarity on and we will be told should have been a red card. And mainly it's because of that visual I just showed all of our listeners on the screen. It's a blatant red all day long. It's a shocking decision in some ways, but it's not because it's just such a shockingly poor match official that still gets these big matches, yet somehow still, gets appointed to Manchester United matches, even after all the drama of all the time. But we got plenty of things to get to. There was another one in this match. I don't know if you saw it. United fans were all screaming for a handball in the second half, wanted a penalty on it. The ball goes off Ismail Sarr's head. It bounces off his hand.
Yeah, it's the biggest non-penalty.
Especially after the rules change, right?
Yeah, there's no way. I thought both players had their hands in natural positions on it.
So one here, before we talk about a couple of the flashpoints that happened in the Arsenal match from a VAR standpoint, there was an interesting one, in my opinion. I'm going to take the Vicario handball out of it because it doesn't really matter because he clearly handled the ball outside the box.
Right.
But it's not a guaranteed goal. It's not a deliberate goal-scoring opportunity. And they changed that rule now, too. Like, people have this misconception that if a keeper handles the ball outside the box, it's an automatic red. It's an automatic red if the handling was deliberate and stops an attacking player from making movement on the ball. He clearly just makes two big touches, loses track of where he is, and just reaches out with the ball. Like, there's not a player around him. Like, that if that becomes a red card, we're fucking lost. And keepers, should never do anything but try to play the ball out with their feet, which we see too much of. But in the West Ham-Chelsea match, in the first half, Chelsea run out to their 2-0 lead, and Somerville gets pulled down pretty blatantly, held by his arm. He goes down a little too easily. I guess that's what Stuart Atwell is hiding behind, in my opinion, as the VAR. How did you see that play? Do you think there was enough contact to warrant a penalty? Do you think he maybe should have asked the match official to go to the monitor? It felt to me like Somerville is going to get on that ball if Fofana doesn't put his arms on him, and you're an attacker who gets pulled down in the box, you're told to go down. Are we penalizing the offensive player there, or are we just giving too much of a break here because it's in the box and anywhere else it's just a foul and a yellow card?
I think the problem with this situation is a highly subjective call based on true goal scoring chance, based on trajectory of the player, pace of the run, all of these things that you sort of, and the way the player goes down, right? So you basically are weighing in all these cumulative subjective calls on this one play. I think what it boils down to for me, and the part that it doesn't sit right to me, is like, if you see an established attacking star in this league go down, they get that call. Like a Somerville is not going to get it yet. And that's the sad thing, because I think it's just as much of a penalty in that scenario as it is if, Son does it, but unfortunately I think that other guy's getting the call and he's not.
Yeah, I have a feeling that this is another one where that panel might come out and actually rule that the VAR referee made the right call not awarding a penalty, but may actually come back and then say, but we believe the match official on the field should have gave the penalty. But once he doesn't, it makes it too subjective of a call for it to be clear and obvious. And therefore, like, this is another one of those, like, how they define it is almost it determines as much of how the outcome comes. So let's hit the two big ones from the Arsenal match, and we are going to stay on the actual VAR decision, so we won't talk yet. We'll get to it when we talk about the match, our opinion on, on Trossard, on how the match was officiated, on how Arsenal set up, the whole nine. But first of all, City's argument. Well, actually, no, I'm going to start with the first one. I had to go back, as I mentioned, because I was in the car. I didn't see the first half, so I missed everything that was good about the match. But I'm going to be honest, it would have been extremely harsh. But Arsenal clearly came in with a dirty and, like, tactical mindset if Kai Havertz is running off the whistle and, like, using his arms to get into Rodri's face and get in his kitchen, even if it had anything to do with just trying to maybe soften up their toughest and their best player. And we're going to talk more about what the loss of Rodri would mean to City. But I think on a different day with a different VAR and maybe another quarter of an inch of where that elbow goes, we might see one of the fastest red cards in the history of the Premier League in one of the biggest matches. Because I think Havertz knew exactly what he was doing. And he also knew he was the only person with a body big enough, other than Gabriel, to get anywhere near Rodri in an area that would make him uncomfortable. And he made sure to do it 15 seconds into the thing. Now, this is a City team that does tactical fouls with the best of them. And it doesn't surprise me that Mikel Arteta's got his guys all red ass from frickin' jump. But I do think they were a little lucky there that doesn't go a different way, because they may lose that thing 8-0 if they lose Havertz to start the match.
A little fortunate. I also think that Rodri sells it pretty good there. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I mean,
he sees it coming. But once the guy actually does it, and I mean, even Graham Lasso in the commentary was like, I don't think it's a red card, but he might be in trouble here.
Yeah.
Like there's a area. I mean, it's very similar to that time when Mane clearly elbowed Reece James 5 seconds into that as we kicked the ball off, and Mane clearly was pissy, and he did it, and like he easily could have been sent off, and luckily he wasn't. That one was more egregious than this because he actually led with the elbow, and I think he kind of got a pass on it. Let's talk about the actual foul in the first half that wasn't called. City felt aggrieved that there was a foul on Ederson. I've watched it back like 5 times. I think Ederson's so weak there, and I've been critical of Alisson as a Liverpool supporter. When he's been weak, Antonio, it feels like once a year, knocks Alisson down on a corner and West Ham scores. That being said, Martinelli knows exactly what he's doing. There's 3 Arsenal players on the keeper, and Martinelli turns his back as Ederson comes for the ball, and then Gabriel heads the ball in. If Ederson makes any effort to come through Martinelli there, do you think he actually gets the call from VAR? Do you think VAR was right to leave this on the gray area and allow the goal?
The funny thing is, I don't know that he does get it, because the Premier League is so lenient on like stuff in the box against goalkeepers in comparison to the other leagues, like the main.
Oh, absolutely.
League. So
that's a foul in every other league in the world. VAR takes that goal away in every other league in the world.
Yeah. So I don't know that he does, although I mean, I agree with you. This is clearly a tactic that Arsenal is using. It's been used on them. And I think a lot of teams are adopting this, where you just basically put a guy behind the keeper and wait for him to go far post and then sit behind him. Like, I don't know. To me, I think I'm okay with it not being called, just because, frankly, it's against City, and but I do think that I think at some point there has to be some sort of definitive idea of where you call this, because it's going to get more and more gray as this continues to happen in this league.
Yeah, I do think they need to find some framework around it, because the set pieces are getting too good in this league. To the point where every team has a specialist. Every team has a destroyer who can score at just about any point. And, if they'll let if they'll let Luis Diaz and Soboslai and all the other little midgets on Liverpool get underneath keepers, and we can just send Virgil, Gravenberch, and Konate to attack 3 different sections of the box, we're going to score a bunch of goals like this too. But I also think that we're going to concede a bunch of goals like this, and we've seen it. And, it did happen to Arsenal. I think it was Villa did it when a couple of years ago, if not last year, when Kamara took out Ramsdale, and then Douglas Luiz scored from the direct free kick on the corner. So obviously Arsenal picked up on it, but I will say this, regardless of whether or not there's a foul on that play, the league better take note, because Gabriel has an advantage over everyone in the Premier League when it comes to attacking a set piece. The numbers of that guy's goals volume for goals scored for big chances created in his career at Arsenal. And I know, Liverpool supporters want to get their hairs across their asses and their panties in a bunch anytime people compare anyone to Virgil van Dijk. And I know the whole Saliba and Van Dijk, that took a whole nother, or Saliba-Gabriel combination is taking this whole other thing now, because they're getting heralded as one of these great center back pairings, and then people want to go to the Matip. You realize that the last year's Gabriel and Saliba stats are based on 37 starts across the Premier League together with a 0.86, and our people want to go crazy that Matip and Van Dijk's 0.76 is way better, and it just shows how underrated and how it's a London bias. Those two started 20 matches in the year that they posted the 0.76. It's on a 17-match minimum. So I think sometimes if you're going to use stats, you got to be honest about those stats. Now, I still think that the best Liverpool center back pairing we saw was the year we won the title, and it was Gomez at his peak before the injury, and Van Dijk, as good as I think Matip was 2 years ago. And I think both of us believe if we get the Konate over the first 5 weeks of this season, they may set new records, because this might be the best we've seen any center back pairing play at Liverpool in a long, long time. I just wish we didn't always have to bring other people down when they're playing really, really well. Because Gabriel and Saliba, in my opinion, deserve all the credit. They've been the best center back pairing for a year and a half in a league that's very difficult to defend.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. 100%.
Just never makes sense. Lastly, we'll get off it quickly. Talking about Saliba or about Gabriel, after the goal, the tying goal, Haaland throws the ball off the back of Gabriel's head. Is it douchey? Yes. Is it unprofessional? Yes. Is it, Bush League? Yes. Is it a red card, Paul?
No, problem. No, I mean, it's not like
I'm with you, and that's my problem. If Ronaldo doesn't get the red for kicking the ball off Curtis Jones from me to you away, how's he getting a red for this?
Yeah, I think you really got to drill somebody, unfortunately. I think, it's so shitty, though, especially on the heels of knowing, what you got to – I don't know. It's tougher when you see him after the post game talking to another manager telling him to be humble. It's like, dude.
Any other manager, and I'd probably have an issue with it. The fact that he took a run at Mikel Arteta actually makes me think like he probably deserved man of the match. I will say this, and we'll get to the performance both from City, from Haaland, from Pep, from Arteta. It was on a weekend where the Premier League had their fan festival and wanted to showcase their product. It was almost everything good, bad, and different about this game. So I think from a Premier League standpoint, they probably had the best showcase match they could while they were doing their showcase, American come out and see this type thing. Like from the anger to the animosity to the 2-2 to the late goal to the red card to explaining what these crazy ass rules are to people that don't get it. Don't think that the broadcast team exactly covered themselves in glory. But I think it's easy to get caught up in the drama of things when you're watching it at halftime. But I think you have to remind yourself every once in a while, you're not Piers Morgan and you're not an Arsenal supporter. And therefore you shouldn't be saying things like they're robbing the referees are robbing the Premier League. I think that's where like Tim Howard gets caught up in trying to actually sound right instead of say the right thing. Because I think as soon as you start to literally question the integrity of the game as a commentator promoting the sport, you're being counterproductive. So while we do our quick around the grounds here, let's stay away from Man City Arsenal because we're going to spend the last good 10-15 minutes of the program talking about that match specifically. Real quickly here, what were your thoughts? I thought it was an impressive performance by Chelsea. I think the league should take note that Maresca is figuring out who his best players are and how to play them together. And if they get that kind of performance from Enzo and Caicedo together at times in that midfield, with those attacking players in front of them, they could be building something pretty special. I still have questions about their defense. What were your overall thoughts? Chelsea 3, West Ham 0. Chelsea right back in the top 4 conversation without a question, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's tough to see them figuring this thing out. I mean, Nicholas Jackson is scoring goals for them. Like, their midfield looks improved. Their defense looks solid. I do think we have yet to see them really – like, I don't know how well they've been really tested, though. I feel like they've had a pretty soft run so far. I'd like to see them get banged up a little bit and play some of these tougher teams. So we'll see. I thought as good as Chelsea looked, I thought West Ham looked equally slow and lethargic, and I just didn't. I mean, they didn't look good at all.
Lopetegui might be in some real trouble. I think. I do think I think he is going to struggle, maybe with turning that side around, and they're not going to give him time. The problem with West Ham is you hire this progressive manager, you give him money to go sign players, and he shows up giving you worse results than if David Moyes were still in charge.
Yeah.
And I think that, to me, is what the bigger issues are. They're booing the substitutions. They're frustrated. He's still not playing his big summer signing, the defender, which makes no sense when they're struggling with defending. Speaking of struggling with defending, as bad as Everton has been, I don't know that you can't argue that over 5 matches, anyone in this league has been worse than Wolves. They're barely scoring goals. I know we always talk about how much everybody likes Gary O'Neill and wants Gary O'Neill to succeed, especially after how he was done pretty dirty by Bournemouth. And then we thought he did a nice job with Wolves. Is it just starting to prove that the combination of the sales they've made, the moves they've made, or just the way they've built this roster for Gary O'Neill, that it's just not going to work for him? Because that, to me, looks like a team that, honestly, genuinely looks like it has no hope.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird to me because they look good in patches. They go 60 minutes in this thing before, they essentially concede and the rails come off. But, they put it together for, 2/3 of the match. And then but when it's not together, it's so bad. And I don't know what that is. I think that they've got this. It's interesting. They got the big Larson kid in. He's just so square peg. He just feels like a square peg in that system. I like him as a player, and I think he's almost like a throwback 9, but it just doesn't work with the pieces around it. So I don't know what the deal is there, but it's not looking good for Gary. That's for sure.
So we get through the first 5 match weeks, and we are down to just 4 unbeaten clubs. Don't think it would have been a big shock to anyone if you told them that they would be Arsenal, and 2 of those would be Arsenal and Manchester City. Potentially even, some might feel a club like Brighton might be one that you would expect to be able to run something like this. Forest, obviously, taking the Liverpool win aside, really looked good. I got to give him credit. we're both very critical of Nuno, but he does look like he started to figure out the fullback rotations. Chris Wood scoring goals, and it is hard to argue the tactics that they set up to play against Liverpool and how much it worked. I don't know it was as good against Brighton. Interesting, another moronic red card. Obviously, I'm not going to ask you if you think Brighton or Forest can go all season without dropping points, but I do want to ask you about Brighton to a degree. Brighton has a couple big results, has found themselves higher up in the table than maybe their supporters. How far should Brighton dream under this new manager, and should they think that they can get back to the heights of a year or two ago when it looked like they might really challenge to be at least perennially in the conversation of Europe?
I think 6 is as high as I can see Brighton going. I think my big thing with them is, love the talent, especially like the young talent on that side, right? I mean, no hesitancy there. That's very clear. I think my main thing is like, do they have the quality? Do they have the depth and the quality to do that, right? To continue that. And I think for me also, it's like, I want to see like where are the goals consistently going to come from in the side. Like that's my other thing is like, can they score enough? Which is weird because I know we think of them as like attack minded, but like I feel like they kind of consistently get goals from all over. At some point, they're going to need to have some concentration of goals coming from some player that they can focus around. And I just don't know who that player is.
Yeah, I've always wondered when that would happen. I thought eventually that would be Evan Ferguson as he got healthy. It doesn't look like this manager is excited about playing to those traits, obviously, because he's still playing well back in Pedro and the way he is. And I think Pedro could be that player. I have the bigger concern that he won't be there long enough to be that player because I just think he's a level – I think he's a level above Brighton. I think he was a level above Watford. Like, I think João Pedro was a guy that will probably go on to play at bigger clubs over the years of his career. It'll be interesting to see if he can make it happen. Speaking of a player that has played at pretty much the highest level, in my opinion, and I, I'll go on record. I've said this multiple times. I've told you guys on the podcast before. I think he is not the best player in the Premier League, not the best player at Man City. I think Rodri might be the most important player in world football, both to his club and to his country in Spain, which is at the top of their game and winning the European. Like, I think every manager sees this player and says to themselves, yeah, he's the first guy on my team sheet and I'll build everything we do good around him. It was when he became the biggest focal point at Manchester City and he's truly superseded Fernandinho and took his role is when I think this City team actually took off and like started to play Pep's best football that they've had there. And I think it was evident with his performance at the Euros how important he is for Spain as well. Reports today he will be out for the entire campaign, potentially back late season, like April or May. If that is the case, how big of a blow is this to City? And we've seen them withstand Aguero. We've seen them withstand John Stones and Diaz. We've even seen them withstand Kevin De Bruyne. Can they withstand losing Rodri for 7 months across 4 fronts?
This is the one player they didn't want to lose, especially because they have an aging De Bruyne that can't string it together and stay healthy. So this is a big one for them. It's a far drop to your next guy when you're looking at maybe Kovacic or even possibly Gundogan. And so I expect they're going to change that midfield formation a little bit to account for that. You might see him kind of go I'm wondering if you'll see him go with almost like 2 holding midfielders.
I think they're gonna play Stones and Kovacic.
Yeah.
And I think they may even play more Rico Lewis at wing back and play with 3 at the back where Stones drops into midfield and does that. And we know Stones can create, and he's not Rodri. Let's not kid ourselves. He's not going to pop up in the box and make a, he's not the best 6 in the world who turns into the best 8 when you need him to for 10 minutes every match and wins you huge. That's the thing about Rodri. He does things that no other player in his position in the world does. And I think that's what makes you that high level. It's the step above what Casemiro was at his highest point at Madrid, which a lot of people said was the best holding midfielder in the world. So I still think, this is brutal, especially from the player who was talking more than anyone else about how the footballers were all playing too many matches. For this to happen to him non-contact and to go down like that, I was listening in the car, and at first they're like, I don't think he's taking a dive here. No one holds their back of their knee to pretend you got faint
right away. You could tell right away the way he went down.
He was concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple quotes here. Interesting. Pep Guardiola said after the match, incredible toil, incredible commitment, and incredible compliment to Arsenal. We did really well in the end. We were fortunate. 99 points left, plenty left to happen. Arsenal's Mikel Arteta says, I'm so proud of the team. We played the game in an unbelievably difficult context. We ended up conceding the goal, but it's already a miracle. We played that long with 10 men. Paul, if you wake up this morning and you are an Arsenal supporter, are you comfortable with those quotes? Or are you maybe sick and tired of hearing your manager tell you it's okay to tie City as long as you play hard or you play well? And it feels like every time Arsenal takes a step forward, Mikel Arteta finds a way for them to mentally take a big, giant step back. Or am I just being too critical of a guy I clearly can't stand?
Oh, the bottom line is the whole Arsenal fan base has adopted this mindset, though. Which is the hilarious thing about it, right? But I think, if you're coming for the crown, you better be a Kingslayer. You know what I mean? And he's not. That's not what, he's almost apologetic about, competing with Manchester City sometimes. It's crazy. And to me, I would want a manager with the mindset of, a little bit of arrogance and a little bit offended, when we're not considered a favorite in this matchup. Because that's absolutely what they should be considered.
Yeah, feeling like they came out. I feel like they once again came out. We're playing for a draw. I will say, after watching the highlights back, I heard people, I think some in our Discord, talking about Haaland's goal like it was nothing. He makes a brilliant run, and the fact that he makes that right-footed toe poke where everyone expects him to kick, the fact that he makes that look so simple, or the left-footed toe poke when he could have tried to wrap it with the right, it is actually a class finish. It's what separates him from all the medium to good strikers, even in the Premier League.
9 out of 10 strikers are taking a touch on that and hitting it on the outside foot. He doesn't touch it one time. He makes the run. 85% of that work is done by the pass and the run, and then the 15% is just the brains to hit it first time inside.
And if he takes that touch wide, like you're saying, to try to get it on his right and wrap the keeper, you know what happens? Saliba has time to close it down and actually defends it. And I think that's the difference between him and the rank and file striker. I thought it was a really well taken goal. Give the young Italian kid credit. Let's be real. He's trying to cross that, but it is one of those crosses that is brilliant, and it goes in, and you can see how happy he was. And the kid's a talent, and good on the manager. I mean, the manager had stones to sit Ben White in this match. I will give him credit for starting Timber and Caliafori on both sides. Do you think that was
what? Do you?
I think it was tactical. I think it was. Okay. I do. I think it was about
the match. There could have been a knock or something, but.
And maybe there was a knock or something. I feel like it was tactical. I think he loves Timber's pace. And I think he knew that he needed Calafiori on the left-hand side to defend the Savinho kid, because that kid is Riyad Mahrez 2.0. He looks like Riyad Mahrez. He picks balls up. He comes back in. He's the one who gives that beautiful pass. That kid is going to be special. Once again, City has themselves a star. That keeps Jack Grealish out of the lineup. But I'll give Jackie G a lot of credit. He needs credit. He changed the whole match when he came on. Kazi was 100% right. You needed a guy with that swagger. The only mistake was Pep didn't bring him on 20 minutes earlier. I don't really understand it.
Sometimes you just need somebody to take somebody on and pull them out of position.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Especially when you're playing with 10 men. But let's take a quick look at the table after the results of the weekend. Obviously, Arsenal sitting 11th, City at 13th, Liverpool at 12, Villa with 12, followed closely by Chelsea and Newcastle. Paul, is this truly a 4-team race? Can Villa stay in this thing? Is this a 2-team race with Liverpool and City? Do you think this comes right down to the wire and we're 4 or 5 teams coming in? Like, where's this league go from here real quick, because we got like a minute or two left?
I think this has potential for 3 teams to pull away. City, Liverpool, Arsenal. I expect to be pretty tight. My real question is this our bottom 3 for the rest of the year? Because when you look at those teams, very well could be. We had 2 games, 4 teams involved that had essentially 6 pointers at the bottom of the table, and they all drew. All those bottom of the table teams drew, so there's no separation now.
Yeah, I think you're onto it there. If Leicester can figure out a way to get some of their players healthy, I do think Leicester will probably have enough. I'll say this about Ipswich. The difference between Ipswich and Southampton is Ipswich looks like it has a plan. I mean, they've now drawn 3 matches in a row, so they started with their brutal Liverpool and Cities, and then they've been able to draw each match since. Do they have to find ways to get some wins? I think they do. I still think Palace is much better than where they show in the table, but at some point, you got to show you're something more than that. I think Everton is going to be in trouble for a while. Something about Everton with them, I always feel like when they get Branthwaite back and him and Tarkowski start playing center defense together, I think they'll look better. I think as they get Mikolenko back, I just feel like Everton is notoriously going to finish 17th or 16th in this league. I really think Wolves and Southampton are in trouble. And then I think one of, and it's scary to say it, but I think it could be Leicester, West Ham, and Ipswich Town probably battling for that last spot. And it's going to be crazy. It's going to be interesting. If I were putting my money on it right now, I'd probably say it's 3 from 5, probably 3 from 6. But you never know what could happen. I mean, we thought Forest would be in there, and they're, top of the half of the table as one of the 4 teams that haven't dropped the point yet. So speaking of not dropping, if you have not dropped by the YouTube page and subscribe to the channel, what the hell is wrong with you? Please get out over to the YouTube channel, give it a subscription. If you give it a like on our Facebook page or Instagram page, you get all of our notifications. You get all the shows that we do, including the Monday podcast, the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the Thursday night. I mean, we got it all. The fantasy show, evergreen shows that are coming. And we got all kinds of new content. So please give the page a like and a subscribe. It goes a long way. For myself and Bickler, thank you for watching another edition of the Premier League show. We will be back next week, and hopefully the league will do a better job at not ruining so many calls. All right, everyone. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.